My name is Brad Stillwell. I'm with Quantiphi. I'm principal architect. Basically, what I'm responsible for is the products that we bring to market, the solutions that we create for our customers, and what that user experience is going to be like. How many of you here have purchased BI or been responsible for implementing BI at your company? Anybody? 1, 2, 3, 4. Excellent. So I'm going to give you kind of a journey of Quantiphi. And one thing I will say is, personally, I bought BI and implemented BI in 3 major enterprises. The good thing is, the third time, I finally got it right. So, if you didn't get it right the first time, there is hope. There's always somebody else you can get a job from, learn from your mistakes, move on. So I'm going to walk you through what we did at Quantiphi to produce and launch a new application into the market. And what was really great about this is we were a brand new company. We started out with a vision to actually create a population health application and to launch it into the market. And during that process, I'll kind of walk you through what it is that we went through and how we came to land on Yellowfin. So just a quick outline of what we're going to talk about. One, we'll talk about what was going on in the market that made all of us walk away from, fairly well-paying jobs that were secure and go start a company from scratch. Bootstrap, no outside funding. And it really had to do with what was going on in the healthcare space. We had a healthcare background. A couple of us came from large healthcare manufacturing companies. And what we saw is that data was becoming extremely important in the healthcare space because of the amount of change that was taking place. So we'll talk a little bit about what was going on in the space. Then I'll talk briefly about what Quantiphi actually does and why we had this crazy idea of creating a population health solution. And then I'll get into a little bit of what we were looking for in a technology partner to be able to deliver on this promise of better analytics. And then I'll jump into the demo, show you a little bit what our population health solution actually looks like in the wild, how it actually has evolved over the last couple of years with all the enhancements that have been added to Yellowfin. So this is actually an embedded application. We use Yellowfin embedded into our application on Azure. And then I'll kind of talk you through what it's meant for our customers, some kind of direct feedback and what this population health has meant for them. So first off, how many of you are aware that there's some change going on in healthcare? Anybody? Did everybody keep their doctor? No? Anybody? I didn't keep my doctor, so you did better than I did. There's been a huge amount of disruption going on in the healthcare space over the last 3 years. So just over 3 years ago, we were working for a large healthcare company, and we saw that we were sitting on this massive amount of information. And we were trying to convince them that this was probably one of the biggest assets that they had in the company, and if they would act on this, they could actually improve healthcare and actually gain market share. As any great entrepreneur knows, that went nowhere. So we had to stop being entrepreneurs and start to become entrepreneurs, which means you quit your job because you know you're right and you're going to go prove everybody wrong. Fortunately, that wasn't a complete disaster. I wouldn't be standing here talking today. It's been a mild disaster. No, it's been fantastic. It's been a great year. So what was going on in the marketplace was the way that healthcare was being paid for and valued was shifting. And the way it was shifting is, in one way, there's these alternative payment models. This is where a hospital can almost become like an insurer. They can take on the risk of their patient population, and they no longer get paid for, you come in, you have a broken arm, they fix it, you leave. The way payment works in this model is they get a per member per month reimbursement from the government, and their job is to keep you healthy and happy. And if they can do that at a lower than that per member per month price, then they get to keep that profit. So they get to have these nice margins. If they don't do a good job of it, they lose money and they go out of business. So a large population of healthcare providers decided we want to go into this new kind of model for being reimbursed for services. On the other side of the coin was we were moving away from what is called a fee-for-service type of model to pay-for-performance. which basically meant you weren't just getting paid based upon you doing the work, you were getting paid on how happy the customer was, basically how good of a job did you do. And if you could do a better job than another hospital and do it at a lower cost, you would get better reimbursements. Now, the two things that these new payment models have in common is they are basically founded on information, access to data. And this is the one thing that we saw was grossly not being addressed in the marketplace. And this is where we found that decision science could really have a huge impact. On one hand, for the organizations that were taking on this kind of accountable care organization model, they could better manage populations if they could understand at an individual level what individual risk looks like. Because my risk and the type of conditions that I have is different from somebody else. And so we have to be managed differently, but we have to do it at a higher level, looking at the entire population. Also, from a fee-for-service to pay-for-performance, they had to measure all these hundreds of quality measures to be able to basically get those reimbursements. And when you're trying to measure all these KPIs, what you don't realize is, you know what, out of these 100 KPIs, if I ignore these 80 and just focus in on these 20 are the ones that are going to give me a boost in revenue, and the other 80 I can put on autopilot and no one will ever know. So they didn't have access to this information. So what we realized was there was a huge opportunity to add immense value and actually get people better care at a lower cost. So we set out to actually create what is now the Quantiphi Health Population Health Solution. It's part of our Q Health suite of applications. And what we were doing in the population health and what we tried to actually accomplish with this application was, one, help these organizations that are moving more towards an accountable care model to figure out where are those high-risk people in the patient population. So segment the population better, understand what is the individual risk of a person within that, and better manage that risk. How to identify which combinations of conditions or disease states can actually drive up risk so that they can start to segment their population into better buckets. And then what costly encounters could they potentially be avoiding by doing things like care management? If you had to just focus in on a couple of key people, who would you focus in on to get the biggest bang and the biggest return? And who can you, again, basically not worry about because they're fairly healthy and you'll continue to get your fees? And ultimately, what they're trying to do is say, if this is where I'm at and I'm making money here, how can I bend that cost curve so that I can make more money in the future? And how do I predict it? And then how do I measure myself to this prediction? So that's what we actually set out to build in our population health solution. Now, we formed a company basically by creating a demo. We put together a demo using Yellowfin of what we thought we wanted to build in about a 2-month period and pitched it to a customer, got our first customer, and then established a company. And what overall Quantiphi has ended up becoming is moved a little bit beyond just doing population health. So what actually is Quantiphi? Well, we founded it on this fundamental belief that data is the new economic asset in an organization. It is probably one of the most valuable things that a company has today. And the companies that better manage it and better utilize it can actually outperform their competition. And the way that we see that is if you can look for these meaningful patterns in your data and surface them and take action on them, then you really can outperform your competition in ways that just weren't possible, 5-10 years ago without this kind of access to information. So what we set out to do was, there was this big promise. There's big data, and there's machine learning, and there's new advanced BI capabilities, but there's this gap between this big promise and most organizations' ability to actually realize that promise. So what we set out to do was kind of level that playing field and close that gap by providing these types of services and solutions to organizations that had good ideas but just didn't know how to get there. And the way we focused was basically in 4 key areas. One, helping companies build more intelligent products. So one of those more intelligent products would be embedded BI into their application. For example, we work with a company that actually does performance management, and we've helped them embed Yellowfin into their web-facing front end to actually drive a new revenue stream for their business. We worked with a company that actually made sensors that you basically scoop up water and it passes light through it and can determine the contaminants. We helped them make a smarter product by actually putting in the predictive model behind that product that actually, in a very few amount of samples, can figure out exactly what contaminants are in the water. We also decided to focus in on finding and helping customers find and retain those high-value customers. This is things like segmentation or customer affinity analysis or mining for clickstream analysis to figure out who should you be targeting, which customers should you hire, and potentially which customers should you fire because they're not going to do your business any good. Then there was improving operational efficiency. This is kind of more where our background came from, working in supply chain, which was what's the best possible outcome I can get given the constraints of my system. So all these kind of things like demand forecasting or sales and operations planning. And then finally, in our population health, how do you reduce risk? How do you identify risk? How do you systematically find where things are going to go wrong and intervene sooner? And where do you just kind of let things go as they are and everything's going to be great? So that's basically what we founded the company about. And to go out and build a population health solution, there's a couple things that we had to get really good at pretty quickly. One is how do you spin up these big data and cloud architectures, basically infrastructure as code. Spin up a big data environment, instantiate it, roll it out so that you can handle pretty much any type of workload that comes at you, whether it's big data, whether it's small data, whether it's structured or unstructured, whether it's batch or streaming. How do you put all of that in one place? And then how do you, through data engineering, turn it into a trusted repository, mix and match the data, and form it into a way that users can use it and make sense of it and trust the information that's there. And then how do you use machine learning to actually run intelligent algorithms on that data to find this not only statistically significant results, but business relevant results in that data set and take action on it. And then business intelligence, where we worked with Yellowfin as our technology partner. This is where it all comes together. This is how you surface those insights, make it super easy for users to figure out what's going on, and then take action on it. This is really the point where all of big data and machine learning come together, because it's the point where the decision's actually made and executed. So going down this journey, we had to figure out how are we going to build this? What were we looking for in a technology partner? And what we settled on was Yellowfin on Microsoft Azure. And there's a couple of things that were extremely important to us that made us land on this technology combination. One, multi-tenancy. We knew we weren't going to build this for just one customer. We needed to build this so that we could support hundreds of customers. But we didn't want to build it hundreds of times. So this is where the multi-tenancy capabilities of Yellowfin came in. We can create what feels like a very customized experience for each one of our customers when they log into our web front end. But in the back end, it's just one batch of code that's servicing all these customers. One set of dashboards, just filtering the information based upon who's logging in. Then there's data gravity. When you're working in big data and you want to work with a cloud technology, you can't use some of the proprietary BI platforms that are out there that require you to move all of your data into their data warehouse, restructure it into their dimensional model structures, because when you're talking about terabytes of data, it just doesn't make sense. We wanted a BI tool that sat on top of our data, created a semantic layer, and allowed us to query the data or play it where it lies, if you will. So this was hugely important to us. And then you have flexible deployment capabilities. While we knew we wanted to build something that was going to run in the cloud, we also knew that because we're working with customers that are in the healthcare space, not everybody's going to go to the cloud. It has to be able to be deployed on-prem. So Yellowfin gave us the ability to both do cloud deployments as well as on-prem deployments in a very easy way. It also allows you to do it on Windows or Linux, because some of our customers are Windows-only shops, other ones Linux only. And some BI tools really force you to kind of make that holy war decision early on. With Yellowfin, we didn't have to. Then there's this term I like to call sophisticated simplicity, which is it has to be brilliantly easy to use, but not sacrifice any of the power behind the scenes. And this is what Tara was talking about with this whole business user versus analyst user type of workflow. From an analyst user's perspective, there's nothing that we've tried that we couldn't build using Yellowfin from a complexity level of how we want to represent data. But when the end user actually works with it, it's a super simple dashboard. Just click here, they get the insight they need, they can move on. And then this whole concept of a collaborative workflow. We're an organization that is both located here in the US and we have a delivery center offshore. So we needed this collaborative environment built into the tool. So when one of us defines something that needs to be created, we can do it right inside the BI tool. Somebody picks it up when we go to sleep. We come in the next day, we have new reports, we have new dashboards, everything's brilliant. It's like the elves come in, build the shoes at night, life's perfect. And then there's scalability. When we started out 3 years ago, there were 3 people. At the end of the summer, we'll have 100 decision scientist employees. But we couldn't make a huge capital investment up front, but we also couldn't sacrifice the scale of the solution that we wanted to build. And Yellowfin, as a technology partner, came to the table and said, we'll grow and we'll help you grow your business and we'll grow with you. So this was something that was huge for us. Not only could we scale to hundreds of customers, but we didn't have to do it all up front, all at once. It's kind of buy, pay as you go, and as we got value, Yellowfin got value. So it's been a great relationship in that sense. So with that, I'll jump into a presentation, or I'll jump out of the presentation into a demonstration and show you what our solution looks like. And you'll have to pardon me, I really don't like this touchpad. All right, so in our population health solution, there's basically 3 main things that we were trying to answer at the onset. Is 1, what is the cost, what's really driving cost and utilization of services in my patient population? 2, how much do high cost encounters actually contribute to the overall cost of care? And 3, what are my top cost and utilization drivers? Who are those accidents waiting to happen, and who are the patients or the members in my healthcare environment that I can kind of just go on autopilot? So as Tara mentioned, there's actually multiple different styles of dashboards inside of Yellowfin. This is our landing page. It's more or less an overview, which allows somebody at a kind of an executive level, maybe a program administrator within a hospital, they can log in and they can see their most important relevant information right when they log in. And what's important to them is how many members do they have, some basic demographics about those members, what is the total cost, in the sense of claims that are being consumed, and then most importantly, that magic number, where am I at from a per member per month perspective? And then and we actually have multiple ways we can represent information inside of Yellowfin. We've of course got our summary charts at the very top. We have kind of a more historical tabular view. And then we have one of these amazing visualizations, as you'll see all the different kinds of visuals that are available in Yellowfin that allow us to just kind of focus in on what's most important to us. So what I'm going to focus in on is just one particular year, 2014. Well, this is really hyper. And I'm only going to look at my medical claims. So I can simply filter my dashboard down, and what I'm going to look at is down at the very bottom, I'm basically breaking out my cost into different buckets. And what I can see is the bucket on the far right are my high cost or high utilization members. These are folks that represent over $50,000 in claims for the year. And what I can see in this combination chart is I've got about 2.4 million in that bucket, but it's only represented by about 32 patients in my patient population. So it's a very small number of patients that are consuming a lot of resources. Well, I can use this kind of guided navigation in Yellowfin, which is something that we find extremely useful for the business user. They don't have to know where they're going to go. They just know, I want to see what's under that bar. They click on it. It immediately drills them down to the lower level of detail. Now I can see all 32 of those members. I can see their total amounts paid so far. I can see what category they are in. I can see how many claims they have. And at the top, I get this brilliant kind of breadcrumb that makes it very easy for the user to see, hey, where did I start? Where am I now? What filters have been applied? And if I keep clicking, I just keep drilling down lower and lower and lower. So now I can get down to the individual patient level. I can see every single encounter that that patient's had and what's driving those encounters. So I can see they've had a couple more recently, some type of, I'm not even going to try and say that, acute. I'm just going to leave it at acute. So we can see at an individual level what the actual interactions have been, what the costs have been, and without even having to know what I'm doing as the user, I can just simply drill down, get to the lowest level, and then when I want, I just simply click on dashboard, and it takes me all the way back up to where I started. So you don't run into this problem like you see in other BI tools, where somebody starts to go down a rabbit hole and they can never figure out how to get back. That doesn't happen to you in Yellowfin. You can always get back to where you started. Well, that's great if you know exactly, if the user just wants to click and kind of be guided. But what if the user actually wants to take their analysis in a whole new direction? That's where Yellowfin has this really awesome capability called Drill Anywhere. So if I click on 2014, every single object that's available to me in my semantic layer now shows up. So I can literally take this analysis in any direction that I want to go. I can see all the different sources, all the different categories, and all the individual fields that are available in the semantic layer. So for me, I actually want to break this down by the description of the claim. So the actual CMS description for this type of condition. So once I drill into that level of detail, now my report automatically updates on the dashboard. But if I want to, I just simply click on the plus sign, and I can actually open up that report in full screen and do a little bit of interaction with it. Any filters that are available automatically show up for me at the top of the screen. So now I can see all my individual encounters. I can see paid amounts for each type of condition, and I can see that per member per month cost. If I want to sort this, it's super easy to just go in, say sort in descending order. I hate this mouse. And what you'll see is there's two important things that pop out at me. One is, the second thing on the list is my routine medical exams. So this is a good thing, right? If I'm trying to keep my population healthy, then I want them actually having routine medical exams because it doesn't cost very much and it can catch things early in the process. So this is a good thing. Basically, routine medical exams are where we have the highest paid amounts and a good number of claims. But a bad thing is my number one item on the list has no value, right? So this is that kind of data quality thing that Tara was talking about. In the past, basically flurries of emails going around, angry customers calling. Now, hopefully our data quality team finds this first. They can literally just go in, create a task right in the tool, flag it as a data quality issue, and assign it to our data quality expert, which we'll say is our admin. And now somebody can jump in overseas. This shows up in their timeline. They fix the problem. They reload the data. Customers happy. They get notified when everything's good to go. So this has been something that just has been added in Yellowfin 7.2 that we're already seeing is going to be a game changer for the way that we actually provide service for our embedded customers. But there's also some really cool ways, as Tara mentioned, data is more valuable when it's shared. And one of the great things is Yellowfin makes sharing data just super easy, right? For end users, all they have to do is go up to the top, click on any one of these icons, and they have some mechanism for sharing information, whether it's just exporting it in pretty much any format that you can think of, or what if they want to actually share it inside the Yellowfin application? All they have to do is type in the user's name, and it automatically notifies the user. But because this is healthcare data, and somebody changed my settings, I had email blocked, but now it's unblocked. So you'll have to take my word for it. You can block it so that they can't actually email it outside of the organization. This is something that's huge that we just didn't find in a lot of the other tools. So you spend all this time and all this money coming up with these great security policies, doing everything to protect your data, and then you give the user this button that they can click and they can send it anywhere outside of the company that they want. In Yellowfin, it's a click of a button to restrict that level of access. And then my personal favorite is this whole broadcasting feature. So what broadcasting really does is allows Yellowfin to work when I'm not at work. So I can look like to my manager that I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning cranking out reports when in fact I'm not. I'm asleep like anybody reasonably would be. But I can set up these type of continuous alert mechanisms so that at any given point in time, when a certain condition is tripped, it will actually notify a user. So in this case, we'll say, you know what, we want to set an alert. It'll actually take whatever filters are already applied to the report. So if you go through all the trouble and filter everything, get it just the way you want, it actually recognizes that and can apply those filters to the alert when it goes out. Now I can set this up on a specific interval, but the best option is to allow Yellowfin to actually do this for me based on a condition. So instead of me having to go in and get an email just to find out that what's going on isn't of any relevance, I can actually set thresholds. So in this case, I really care about per member per month. And if per member per month is greater than or equal to, let's say a pretty high threshold of 1,000, I want to be notified. Now, that's not just at the aggregate level. I can actually choose. If the total aggregate number trips past this, it's going to send out an email. Or if any row in this table goes past this threshold, I'm going to send out the email. So it gives you very sophisticated capabilities, and then it just spells it out for you in plain English on the screen exactly what's going to happen. This alert is going to go out for when per member per month is greater than or equal to 1,000, right? So it's like, it just makes it super easy for the business user to actually serve themselves and to look like they're doing a lot more work than they're actually doing. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of this report. And I want to show you one other thing, because I know we're short on time, and I understand that I had the distinct honor of being between you and food and drinks, which is never a good place to be. So the next thing I want to quickly cover is our member disease risk dashboard. So what this is kind of what Tara talked about as an analytics dashboard, where we have one of these amazing visualizations that literally allows us to plot thousands of patients on 2 axes that are extremely important. On the y-axis, we have what their risk profile is, and I'll talk a little bit about how we actually calculate risk. And then along the bottom axis, we have what are they utilizing from a claims perspective. And then we basically color code them so that they're in different buckets. The blue dots are my highest consumers, red dots, not as much, going down the scale. So what this allows me to do in one view is look at our entire patient population from a risk and cost perspective and find those users or those members that are most likely candidates for any type of intervention activity where maybe I might want to do a specific management activity around diabetes. I can just find the ones that are the highest, risk diabetes that maybe haven't used the most cost yet and solve the problem before it starts, or the ones that are costing me a lot. I might want to focus on them to have case management where somebody's contacting them every week to make sure that they're taking their medicine so that that cost doesn't go any further over to the right. And what I can see is down at the bottom, I can see every individual disease state for each one of the members within the population. And what I can actually see is we assign a risk score to every condition that a user has. So for every identified disease that a user or a member might have, we assign a risk score. But what we also do is we take into consideration interactions between certain diagnoses. So what you'll see is we've got, for this user, we've got morbid obesity, we've got diabetes with chronic complications. It also has an interaction with 85. So if I scroll down, 85 is congestive heart failure. What that means is these 2 disease conditions together significantly boost the risk of this individual member. So we actually compound the risk score, and the user can actually see, the administrator can actually see how the risk is calculated, see the co-interactions of certain diseases, and know that, okay, now this person's even more risky than what they were before, so it actually elevates them on that risk scale. So we started out looking at about 5,000 members in this hospital network. What we can see is just by going through the process of looking at their conditions and assigning risk, we can now narrow that down to only 1,700 that have some level of risk that we might want to manage, right? So out of 5,000 people, now I'm down to 1,700 that might actually have something that I need to do. And of that 1,700, if I just want to focus it to ones that maybe have what I would call high risk, 4 or more, then I can just filter this down. And now instead of having to look at 1,700 people, I have to look at 16 people. So as a case administrator, it might be very daunting to look at a patient population of 5,000 people and say I have to bend the cost curve and control the spend of this population. But just by applying some basic risk calculation and scoring, now I can say, you know what? I can manage 16 people. I can put together a program that is effective in managing these 16 people because these 16 people are most likely going to be the highest contributors to cost utilization within my network. So this is like game-changing for most of our administrators. It just takes what kind of feels like an insurmountable problem and makes it much more tactical and much more addressable. And then kind of the last thing I'll touch on is this patient information dashboard. This is kind of what Brian was talking about as a operations portal. So this is something that they can actually embed into their application, maybe into their order entry system or more into their electronic medical health record system, because it's super easy to embed Yellowfin. You literally get a little Java snippet, drop it in, and now you've got this embedded dashboard. And what this allows them to do is on one screen, they can see everything that's going on with this patient. They can see their most common diagnosis on the left. They can see how much, where did my mouse go? I can, if I want to see this in more a tabular view, I can just quickly switch. I can see what is the kind of, issues that this person's having. We see diabetes. I can see where they're going for service. There's multiple providers. I can see that green is kind of other. Maybe this is an out-of-network provider. So yeah, the cost of using this out-of-network provider is not too bad when I look at kind of the other providers. But I can quickly change what I'm looking at. So in this case, I want to look at a different KPI, which is claims. And now what I can see is, yeah, even though it's not a whole lot, they're going outside of the system significant amount of times for service. It's not costing a lot yet, but that's a problem for us, right? We want to keep these folks within our network because then we can better control costs. If they're going outside of our network, we have no control over what that cost is going to be. So on this dashboard, they basically have all the history for an individual member across all the different interactions that have taken place. And now they can just quickly go in. Somebody who's literally on the floor can go in, take one quick look, see what's going on with this patient, and then move on. Not have to spend a lot of time in the tool. They enter one piece of information, the patient ID, and they get the immediate results. All right. Let me do one last thing. So let me just give you a little kind of view into what kind of analysis you can create based on the data that's available in here. So I'm going to go in and actually create a new report because we see all this claim information over time, but what we'd really like to see is where is this patient trending? Are they probably spending more? Are they probably going to spend less? And where are they likely to land? So I'm going to go into kind of the creation mode and actually build a new report on the fly. So as I mentioned, Yellowfin has this concept of a semantic layer. We've brought together claims information, reporting information, patient roster information. There's probably 5, 6 different data sources feeding this data set, all of which are now kind of brought together in this semantic layer into one view, which makes it very easy for a user to go in and do reporting. Now, obviously, they can go in and they can, dig through all these folders of literally hundreds of fields that are available to them. But what's super easy is they can literally just type in what they want, right? Like search is everywhere inside of Yellowfin. You don't have to spend a lot of time looking for the information that you want. So what I'm looking for is the date. And let me do one thing. So I'm going to drag in date, and I also want to look at my paid amounts. So now I can see what I'm paying day by day over the entire patient population. But because I might want to put this on my patient dashboard, I'm actually going to put a filter in here for the member ID. I'm just going to drag this over into my filter section. And now, if I drop this into the dashboard, it's already able to instantly start talking to the dashboard because I have that common filter. So let's look at the different ways we can actually visualize this information. So what you saw was how easy it is to actually build visualizations inside of Yellowfin. And the best part, I think, in the most current releases is this auto chart capability. When you're an analyst, you know exactly, you've got your little infographic that tells you if you're looking at time data, you should be using a line, right? You've got this beautiful little infographic that tells you all the different ways you're supposed to visualize information. You pull out your book on New York Times best practices for data visualization. You turn to page 34. Yep, I should be using a bar chart. But if you're a business user, a lot of times you really don't know how you should represent this information. You just know I've got these fields and I want to represent them some way. That's where auto charting makes it just super easy for an end user. They literally just have to start dragging in what it is that they want to see, and Yellowfin starts to visualize it and pick the best visual based on the data that they've brought in. So here it understands that I brought in time information, so it's going to put this more in a time series analysis. But I brought in day information. If I actually want to look at this by week, by month, by year, in other tools, you'd have to go in and build all of these different ways of slicing and dicing your data. I can just simply go in and say, you know what? I want to see it by month. It automatically recalculates and groups the information at the correct level. So now I can see very easily, here's what's going on from beginning of time to now, all the data that I have for this patient. But now I want to be able to kind of predict out, okay, what's likely to happen, or what way is this trending? So as Tara mentioned, I can just drag and drop trend on there, or I can literally just hit the drop down and say, you know what, I want to apply a trend. And if I want, maybe something that's not directly fitting the line, I'm not worried about super accuracy. I more want, just kind of, is this thing going up or is it going down in the long run? Then I'm going to pick more of a linear regression. So I basically just want to see, is my line going up, is my line going down, or is my line flat? So in the total population, I am slightly trending up. So my costs are slowly growing over time. But where am I likely to land? I can simply go in and say, you know what, let's apply a forecast to this information. And as you saw, you get all different types of forecasting capabilities. Here, we have different confidence band intervals. I'm not real worried about confidence. I just want something that looks pretty. So I'm going to pick a moving average. So now basically what it's going to do is it predicts out my next couple of months of where we're likely to land from a claims payment perspective. So we can see it kind of trends up, it dips a little, and then starts to level out based on the historical pattern. I'm not a statistician. I work for a data sciences company. I'm not a data scientist. I don't know what a linear regression is. My manager will tell you that's true. I just know how to say it and sound smart when I say it. But I don't have to, because Yellowfin just kind of figures it out for the end user. So literally within a couple of clicks, I'm able to put together a visualization that tells me what's happened in the past, what's likely to happen in the future, and basically am I trending in the right direction, yes or no. And then because I applied that filter, I can simply go in and plug in my data. In this case, what was that user that we were looking at? And now I can see specifically what's going to happen with this patient. Are they trending up? Are they trending down? Or are they staying flat? So I can see this user has, a significant growth over the last couple of months, but hopefully will start to stabilize a little bit. Now I know I definitely probably want to take interaction with this person because it's a continuous growth. I mean, that line is not stopping unless I do something about it. So hopefully that gave you a little bit of a view of what population health is and how
how easy it is for end users to go in and work with this information, kind of do this guided analysis, but also how they can go in and create new content on the fly, even though we haven't thought of a way for them, how they might want to use this. So let me just jump real quick right back in to the storyboard, and then I'm almost done, and then we can really have fun. All right. So what does this mean for our customers? Because at the end of the day, hey, we built something really cool, we used a lot of really great technology, but the whole reason we started this was because we felt like, given the right kind of information, these hospitals could actually bend that cost curve, stay in business, actually, retain a little bit of profit for themselves, but more importantly, actually provide better outcomes for the patient population. So when we rolled this out at Lynn Community Health Center, this is a hospital system outside of the Boston area. And if you've ever been to Lynn, Lynn is not the nice part of Boston, right? This is the underserved community, right? This is a safety net. This is a very high cost population, a very risky population of individuals. We were able to roll this out, and now what they've basically been able to do is better manage this patient population and actually succeed, and not just say survive under new healthcare reform, but are actually starting to thrive because now they have access to meaningful information. And the way that they're using it today is basically, one, to look at the individual population and segment it out so that they can really understand at an individual level which users are the high-cost users, which ones have the problems, what areas do they need to focus their care management. They now have that individual risk score that they can monitor over time because that risk score changes. So the fact that it evolves, it's not a point-in-time snapshot. It changes as the patient changes over time. And they can track the progress of that patient. They can track the efficacy of their care management program because they can see when did they intervene with this patient and where are they today, and were they able to actually change the outcome? Were they able to improve the cost profile for their business? And were they able to actually get higher scores when it comes to those quality measures like, did the patient have a good experience? Did they have good outcomes? So this is something that has been basically the game changer for this organization. And for us, there's obviously the karma value. Like, we feel really good about the fact that we've been able to help an organization that really was going to struggle in the New World Order to not lose ground, but actually gain a more solid footing. And for us, the benefits of using Yellowfin on Azure have been so foundational to our organization that we've gone on to build multiple other applications in various other verticals, from media to insurance, still in healthcare, high-tech services. So we're building even more and more of these types of solutions that we continue to roll out. And the reason is because of the points you see here. One, Yellowfin's super easy, right? The time to insight is amazing. I haven't used a BI tool where that time to insight was better than Yellowfin. The fact that we thought of a company and an idea and 2 months later had a minimum viable product and a first customer signed on, I mean, try and do that with another tool. It's just not going to happen. You can't. Secondly, the availability. The fact that this is available anywhere because it's cloud-based and because Yellowfin does mobile, does web, does everything so well, this solution is available on their cell phone. It's available anywhere that they are, so they have immediate access to information whenever they need to. And then from a deployment standpoint, I mean, it's literally a one-click deployment when you're using Azure with Yellowfin or whatever cloud product you might be using. I mean, they just made this super simple. You can jump in, you can start playing around. They give you a couple of licenses to start with, so you can actually see this working in your environment. And then the big thing for us, great TCO. We're still a bootstrapped organization, right? 3 years young. We've taken no outside funding. We've got 100 employees almost now. And we couldn't have done that if we were paying out millions of dollars up front for a BI tool to find out maybe if it was going to work. The fact is, we continue to stay with Yellowfin because they continue to help us grow our business. They're investing in us as much as we're investing in them. And for all these reasons and more, this has been a fantastic partnership, and we'll continue to use Yellowfin going forward. Hopefully that was helpful in some way, shape, or form. Thank you very much. I'll turn it back.